The new administration in Washington promises to reverse the slow but steady movement over the past decade towards criminal justice reform. Many cities and states are determined to keep the momentum going, and they're supported by some of the country's leading research and academic centers. One of those centers is right here in New York. John Jay College of Criminal Justice, one of the senior colleges of the City University of New York, has blossomed into a world-class center of criminal justice research. The transformation is in large part due to the vision of John Jay's fourth president, Jeremy Travis. President Travis is stepping down after 13 years at the helm of John Jay to return to his own research interests. We're honored to have him with us today to look back at his eventful tenure and to look ahead at the shape of justice in America. President Travis, welcome.
Thank you for the invitation.
This has got to be an emotional time for you.
This is a moment of transitions. My time at John Jay is coming to an end, and I'm about to start a new chapter. So it's a moment of reflection and a lot of excitement, actually.
Well, reflection sounds almost passive, but I wanted to start off with a question that you were awarded a Disruptor Award. Now, that's not exactly what you usually think of as a college president, as a disruptor. Does that somehow jive with your self-image?
Well, this was interesting. There's a group associated with the Tribeca Film Festival, headed up by this remarkable man, Craig Hatkoff. And then every year they give awards to individuals in different sectors of public life who are disruptors by their measure. And I was delighted to get the award this year along with my colleague Vivian Nixon. So in the criminal justice domain, where there's so much happening, I took this as a recognition of the work that I've been doing to just ask tough questions and to engage the public on issues of criminal justice reform. And it may be unusual for a college president to do that sort of work, but I've always thought that was part of my job, and certainly part of the John Jay mission. Was to be a fierce advocate for justice. So if you're fierce, I guess you're disruptive.
Well, it's not the role that you think of, as you said, as of a college president, but actually John Jay is a different sort of institution, and in the last 13 years, you've made it even more different than it was. It's achieved remarkable stature in the world of criminal justice research, and in many other ways, it's an activist institution. How would you classify it yourself? Is it a disruptor as a school, do you think, or is it disruptor in terms of the students who graduate and become disruptors themselves?
Well, I love our mission. Our mission is educating for justice. I love the fact that we all call ourselves, whether we're students or faculty or administrators, fierce advocates for justice. And that does set us apart from every other institution, and we're proud of that. We make no bones about our uniqueness. And that means that when students come here and sign on to being a John Jay student, they are attracted by that mission, and that includes faculty and others, and includes presidents. So all of us are committed to the cause of justice. That means that we have to start with a recognition of injustice and what's available for our passion and our scholarly inquiry to advance the cause of justice. So we are disruptors, and it was the more I thought about this award, which was to me but also to the work that's happening here, it seemed quite appropriate.
Let's talk a little bit about the work that's happening here, and that's happened here during your tenure. What would you think would be, you've done, and the college has contributed some amazing things in terms of justice, both in New York and nationally. But I think of the mass incarceration panel that you were commissioned of, the stop and frisk work. But tell us a little bit about what you think are the principal achievements over the last 13 years that John Jay has been responsible for.
Well, I think we have contributed to important policy discussions locally, nationally, and increasingly internationally. And this is the work of our faculty. And we've been able to elevate evidence and scholarship and critical thinking about these issues to a level of engagement in the public discourse that I think did not exist for John Jay before. John Jay has a long history, over 50 years, of being involved in a number of critical issues, mostly around policing, but not solely. But the last decade plus has seen this intersection of the John Jay capacity, mostly of our faculty, and the national discussion about criminal justice reform, whether it's policing and Black Lives Matter, stop and frisk, mass incarceration, juvenile justice, mental health, all of the issues that you've explored on this show there's been this intersection between John Jay's capacity and our contributions and the national discussion.
What would you single out as probably the premier achievement, if there was one?
I think the place where we've made the greatest contribution has been on policing, violence, and race. And that has been something that the National Network for Safe Communities has brought forward. But others at the
John
college,
Jay Center.
John Jay Center, headed up by our Professor David Kennedy. Now we have Phil Goff here at the Center for Policing Equity, who's exploring a lot of the same questions. Preeti Chauhan, who heads up the Misdemeanor Justice Project, now about to go to 6 more cities. Same questions. And in a slightly different way, the Prisoner Reentry Institute has been asking questions about the criminal justice response and levels of incarceration that are really central to the national consensus now to go in a different direction. Jeff Butz's center, so the Research and Evaluation Center, more locally has been exploring those issues. And some of our faculty who are engaged in, I'm thinking of Leila Kazemian, who looks at issues of life course and assistance. We have professors here who are all in different ways exploring very, very salient issues, including, I'll just mention another one, Michael Pfeiffer, who has written one of the premier books on lynching in America. So to think that we have a faculty and a mission, all of them aligned in very broad strokes around justice and engaged in the world in very active and interactive ways, means that John Jay is a place, we call it an institutional consequence, where we do things that matter. And the national discussion is fertile in ways it never has been before. So that gives John Jay the ability to make a very important contribution to our country.
I want to get to the national discussion in a second, but I wanted to go back to the key products of the university, which are the students. I can call them products. We have an amazing student body, and that's changed considerably over we began as a policing school. What was your vision in terms of changing the nature of the student body, what they would do, and the kinds of things they would specialize in and be interested in?
Well,
how do you think they've changed?
We have been on a very important journey over the last 13 years in terms of the core academic mission of the college. We are now a liberal arts college. We weren't before. What does that mean? It means we offer majors in philosophy, law and society, Spanish, history, English. That means that a student who comes here who may initially be interested in criminal justice because they think that's what speaks to them, as part of their educational process can end up majoring in English and go to law school and be a great advocate for civil rights in our courtrooms. We want to have an institution that allows our students to explore their fullest potential, and we want one that's excellent. So that means that we've raised standards dramatically. We are no longer a comprehensive college, we're now a senior college. If you don't meet our now more rigorous standards, you can't be admitted here. You can start at a community college and come to John Jay, but we are now a senior college within the City University of New York. We are now a member of the Macaulay Honors College, which has its first graduation of John Jay students this year. We have more fellowships, we have more opportunities. So one of the statistics I'm proudest of as I step down from the presidency is that this year we are setting a record level of applicants of high caliber students to John Jay. So there's something happening in the world of 16 and 17-year-olds in terms of our reputation and our appeal, and we're speaking to the next generation in ways that are very powerful, and they're voting with their feet. They're coming to John Jay and they're finding what they want here. First of all, people recognize that the City University of New York is one of the most important institutions to the city. When we talk about issues of income inequality and upward mobility and integrating the next wave of immigrants from around the world and helping them find their foothold in the American dream, right at the center of that for our city is the City University of New York. And there's a political recognition from the governor to the mayor to the political forces in our city that CUNY is indispensable to the well-being of the city of New York. We've also been able to secure some successes with increasing tuition for students that can afford it. The governor has now announced the Excelsior program, which provides a free tuition for those at certain income levels in our state, and I think he will expand upon that in the years to come. So I think there's a possibility that New York State, through its public universities, and in particular New York City, will be able to show the way for public higher education. And at the center of that, and I'm biased, is John Jay. We are now doing things that are seen as highly innovative in terms of meeting the core challenge, which is increasing retention rates and graduation rates, the Apple Core program, the ACE program, the SEEK program. Some of these specialized programs are showing the way, and what they demonstrate is that our students are capable of that success if we provide the right support. So my hope would be, as I leave, that those successes will get more support, and that they are looked at as demonstration projects, and that the research coming out of them will point the way towards a different financing model for public higher education in New York at CUNY. Why? Because the future of our city, and it's not an exaggeration, depends upon the success of CUNY. Full stop. And we're ready to do that.
So how do you think some of John Jay's work has affected New Yorkers personally?
Well, we think of ourselves as a New York City institution, so that question looms large when we think about our research, and certainly when we think about our educational mission. Our research has focused on things that matter to New Yorkers. I'll give a couple examples. We were one of the first institutions to really document the significant increase in stop and frisk activities by the NYPD, and now the significant decline in stop and frisk activities. And we always examined those trends through the lens of race, gender, is it men or women, and age. So one of our findings is that the lives of young men of color in New York have changed significantly over the last 20 years because of the decline in enforcement activities and because of the significant decline that we also documented in the number of people going to Rikers Island or to be held in corrections. So that's a very real difference for people coming up today in New York. The Prisoner Reentry Institute has also looked at the experience of coming home from jail and prison and has had numerous forums here where we have talked with people about how to make those experiences less traumatic, successful in terms of returning to work, or we like to think in terms of coming to college. And because that's a large number of people, high volume activity, if we can make changes there, the ripple effects will be enormous.
Let's segue from that actually to the national level. It's a good opportunity to look at the national landscape of justice in many ways. You're going back, in a sense, to your first love, research and scholarship, at a time when, if you look nationally, the outlook for criminal justice reform has never been as bad as it's been in the last 10 years. Should we lose heart because of the current situation, the current atmosphere, or is there room for optimism about where justice reform can actually go?
So respectfully, I want to quibble with the statement that the outlook for criminal justice reform has never looked bleaker. And it's not just because I'm an optimist by birth and by nature, but I really think the outlook for criminal justice reform is very positive right now. We have to set aside what's happening in Washington. Clearly there's been a big step back with the current Attorney General, the current administration, on issues of policing and consent decrees and the like, and that's not nothing. That's actually very important. But my focus has always been more on what's happening at the state level and at the city level. At the state level, we have a number of states that continue to be every bit as serious as they were before the election in reducing the levels of incarceration. We have now a number of states, a handful, but it's getting to be a bigger number of states that have seen their prison populations decrease by 20% over the last 5 to 10 years. That's significant. At the local level, we have this interesting phenomenon of a number of cities, and unfortunately Chicago is the one we usually point to, but there are others that have seen significant increases in crime. Very troubling. But we also have a number of cities ours included, that have seen significant decreases in crime at the same time. New York, if you look at the data coming from the police department, New York is on track to have another record year in terms of low crime rates. That's a cause for optimism. So people should look at those cities that are seeing these decreases, or the states that are reducing their prison population, and take heart from that, but also ask, what are they doing? And how can other states follow? But as a political matter, this is why I disagree with you. The consensus, the left-right consensus that was celebrated over the last years still holds.
Does it?
It does hold. And if after the election, a number of us received calls from our colleagues and compatriots on the conservative side of the spectrum who said explicitly, we are still in. We are still committed to the reform. Washington, just to be very clear about it, is problematic. The legislation that some of us hoped would be passed, that was getting a lot of bipartisan support, never made it through Congress before the Obama administration left. It seems unlikely, although there are some who are pointing to Jared Kushner and others who might actually keep it alive. But to me, that matters less. Although it would be great to have federal leadership, it matters less than what's happening at the state and local level. And there, the consensus remains strong.
The rhetoric, however, which does set the tone of the climate, is in the other direction.
That is
And
true.
where the federal government does have something to say about criminal justice is exactly in that environmental.
I think the fear right now is that at a level of public understanding, as opposed to what the policymakers are doing, that there has been a shift, and certainly the presidential campaign and the statements coming from the president about carnage and fear and law and order feel like a return to the 60s, 70s, 80s that basically brought us to this current reality. I think the American people are smarter than that, and the policy direction continues to be what I think of as being in the right direction. And politicians will have to figure out how to explain what they're doing and tap into public support. But let's not forget the activism on the left right now. So maybe that we're seeing activism on the right and the left that's stronger, more accentuated, more in technicolor than before the election. We have very strong activism on the left in terms of criminal justice reform. And the era of mass incarceration, so many people are saying it's time to end it, left and right. The concern that's coming around policing from Black Lives Matter and from police reformers, and the IACP of all organizations calling at its highest level.
International Association of Chiefs of Police.
International Associations of Chiefs of Police, where the leadership is calling for a process of reconciliation, acknowledging that the police have been on the wrong side of racial justice for decades. This is unprecedented in our world, and that's what I hold on to when I have my moments of optimism.
So can we expect to hear your voice in the years ahead on this?
You will always hear my voice, and I'll find ways to return and talk to you, and I want to be more active, more vocal, and be part of this next era, which holds great promise.
You're always welcome here. So do you have any parting words of advice to give to the next president, Carol Mason?
John Jay is so lucky. Carol Mason is going to be the next president. She comes out of the Justice Department of the Obama administration, where she was for the second term the Assistant Attorney General for Justice Programs. That means that she oversaw all of the justice reform efforts of the department, working with Attorney General Lynch and before that Attorney General Holder. She is firmly committed to the mission, the justice reform mission of John Jay. She is so enthusiastic about taking on this new responsibility. She was here recently and spent time with students and faculty and had an open town meeting. She's going to be just great, and it means so much to me personally, because we're friends, that she is going to be my successor, and I think she's just going to bring John Jay to a new level of excellence and relevance and engagement and great promise for our students and our faculty.
Thank you, Jeremy. We'll look forward to seeing you again here.
Hope so. And thanks for all that you've done over the years, Steve, to elevate the profile of the college and to give forum for thought leaders on issues that matter. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Disruptors and innovators like Jeremy Travis are essential to accomplishing change. But while we celebrate his achievements at John Jay, we recognize that reforming our justice system won't be accomplished by the work of a single person or even a single institution. It takes the commitment of all of us and the pressure we apply in our letters to legislators and at the ballot box. Wherever you stand on these critical issues, that's important to remember. I'm Steve Handelman. Thanks for watching. Have a good summer, and see you in the fall.